I'm 68 years old, and I raised my son on my own. His mother left us right after he was born. She walked away, and I stayed holding a newborn baby in my arms, not knowing what to do next, but knowing one thing for sure: I couldn't give up. I wasn't a perfect father. I was scared. I was overwhelmed. I was lonely more times than I can count. But I stayed. Every day, every year, I stayed. And today, I want to tell you what it was really like to be not just a father, but the only parent my son ever had. When I met Rose, I was 20 and she was 19. We were young, in love, and still in college. We didn't know much about life yet, but we thought love could get us through anything. At least I did. Then Rose got pregnant. We both came from poor families, so we were terrified to tell our parents. We knew how hard life already was for them, and the last thing we wanted was to add more trouble. We told my parents first. They were shocked, sure, but they said they would help us however they could. They said they'd babysit sometimes, help us stay on our feet. Then we told Rose's parents. That went very differently. Her father was a strict man, the kind of man nobody argued with. Her mother never stood up to him. The day they found out, they threw Rose out of the house. So we moved in with my parents. We didn't have money. We didn't have a plan. But we were together. At least that's what I thought. Because after a while, something changed in Rose. She got colder, distant. She barely talked to me. Sometimes I felt like she hated me. Maybe she didn't hate me personally. Maybe she hated what her life had become. Maybe she just wasn't ready. But when you're that young, you don't know how to read people like that. You just feel them slipping away. Then, 9 months later, our son was born. I still remember holding him for the first time. He was so small, so fragile, and in that moment everything changed for me. I looked at him and knew my life was not mine anymore. From that day on, it was about him. But Rose, she had already made up her mind. Right after giving birth, she signed away her parental rights. She didn't say it to my face. She didn't sit me down. She didn't even try to explain. She just left me a letter saying she couldn't live that way and was leaving for another state. That was it. I looked for her. For a long time, I looked for her. I went to her parents' house more than once, but they wanted nothing to do with me. They shut the door in my face like I was nobody, like my son was nobody. And eventually, I understood. I was on my own. Then a year later, life hit me again. There was a fire. My parents died in it. Just like that, at 22 years old, I was completely alone with a baby. No degree, no real career, no money, no safety net, nothing. The only thing I had was a room in a home for struggling families, and a little boy depending on me for everything. People used to look at me like I was some kind of mystery. Some looked at me with pity, some with respect. Some just couldn't understand how a young man could raise a child alone and still keep going. But the truth is, I didn't keep going because I was strong. I kept going because I had no other choice. At night, I'd leave William with my aunt and go work the night shift. Then I'd come home in the morning and spend the day taking care of him, feeding him, bathing him, taking him to the doctor, rocking him when he cried, sitting by his bed when he got sick. I wasn't living back then. I was surviving. Those 5 years aged me fast. I'm sure they put 10 extra years on my face, but I never left my son. I never walked away. I never told myself it was too hard. Because the truth is, children don't ask to be born. Adults make that choice. And when they do, they owe that child everything. I never found Rose. Eventually, I stopped looking. Not because I stopped caring, but because I got tired of chasing someone who had already made her decision. When William turned 10, I was finally able to buy a small old house on the edge of town. It wasn't much. It was old, a little beat up, and needed work, but it was ours. I remember William standing in the empty living room and asking me, "Dad, is this really our house?" And I said, "Yeah, son, it is." That little house felt like the biggest victory of my life. William grew into a good kid, smart, kind, strong-hearted. But there was one question he kept asking me through the years, and it was the one question I dreaded. Why doesn't she visit? Why doesn't she call? Why does every other kid have a mother around and I don't? And I was afraid to tell him the truth. I was afraid that if I told him she abandoned him, he'd grow up believing there was something wrong with him, like he wasn't enough, like he wasn't lovable. And no child should ever carry that kind of burden. So I lied. I told him she worked in Europe. I told him she was far away. I told him maybe one day she'd come back. Looking back now, maybe that wasn't the right thing to do. But at the time, I was just trying to protect his heart. I never missed his birthdays, never missed school events, never missed the important moments. I tried to teach him what it means to be a man, not with speeches, but with how I lived. I taught him that being a man means showing up. It means taking responsibility. It means staying when things get hard. Then one day, when William was 25, he came to me smiling. He said, "Dad, I met someone. I really think she's the one. I want to marry her." And I was happy for him, truly happy. When I met Anna, I liked her right away. She was kind, respectful, warm, good-hearted. She came from a decent family, not rich, not poor, just solid people. After a while, we all agreed it was time for me to meet her parents. They came over to our house one evening, and the moment the door opened, my whole world stopped. Because I saw her, Rose. Older, of course, changed, but it was her, standing there with another man, her husband, and their younger daughter. She had a whole life, a whole family, a future, and all those years she had lived like my son didn't exist. I can't even describe what I felt in that moment. It was like every ounce of pain I had buried for 25 years came rushing back all at once. I felt my chest tighten, my eyes filled with tears. William and Anna had no idea what was happening. Rose didn't recognize me at first. But then I looked at her and said, "How could you?" And the second I said it, her face changed. She knew. She remembered me. And she understood exactly who William was. She turned pale and ran out of the house. Her husband ran after her, confused and shocked. It was clear he had no idea. He had been living in the dark too. The whole room went silent, and then I looked at my son and said quietly, "That's your mother." I will never forget the look on his face for as long as I live. Shock, hurt, confusion, anger, all at once. Rose never came back inside, and this time I didn't go after her. I had already done that years ago. I had already lived that pain. I had already carried that weight without her. I never really had relationships after that, not because I didn't want love, but because I didn't have room for it. My life was about one thing: raising my son right, making sure he had a chance at a better life than I did, and I did that. William never forgave his mother, and honestly, I can't blame him. Some wounds never fully heal. He and Anna didn't get married, but over time they were able to stay friends. Maybe that was the only possible ending after everything came out. Now that I'm older, I understand something clearly. Life is not fair. Sometimes people betray you. Sometimes they leave. Sometimes they disappear when you need them most. But even then, you still have a choice. Maybe not between pain and peace, but between running away and standing your ground. And if there's one thing I want people to take from my story, it's this. Love is not what you say. Love is not promises. Love is not the big words people throw around when everything is easy. Love is what you do. Love is staying. Love is showing up. Love is carrying the weight when nobody else will. Love is choosing not to leave, even when leaving would be easier. So, if you're going through hard times right now, if life feels unfair, if you're tired and hurt and wondering how much more you can take, don't give up. Keep going. Because one day, you'll look back and realize that all those quiet sacrifices, all those sleepless nights, all those moments when you chose responsibility over comfort, they meant something. They built a life. They shaped a future. They saved someone who needed you. And in the end, that's what matters.